If you're starting out within the career market or developing as a person of value, you wouldn't help but notice there are some amazing people out there known as management consultants working for the Big Four, or trying to get to the Big Four at least, in so many different capacities. Now, of course, in my journey starting out as a contractor, I got to work with every single type of consultant within the Big Four and in other consultancies as well. And I really got some deep insights in terms of how they worked. Now, of course, I'm not going to share any specific information to specific consultancies, but I will share what I've seen and learned in terms of the differences between a contractor and a consultant as well. And what I've realized is that if you get the contracting game really well, then this is where you move into the space of professionalism and become what I call an independent consultant. Now, there are so many different definitions of consultant that exists out there. Now, if you think about the Google definition, it describes it as a person who provides advice professionally, or at least expertise. And so, we live in an age right now where everyone's calling anybody who freelances or coaches or is an expert as a consultant. And in many ways, to a degree, that is correct. But I'm looking at it from a more conservative standpoint, and from a standpoint of the traditional sense of a management consultant. So individuals who work for some sort of consultancy or firm or organization that delivers consulting services. And so these services may range from strategy, operations, people and organizations, analytics, etc., etc. Now, usually in these consultancies, there may be one parent organization or company that owns different partner groups that do different specialist services, such as strategy and ops, as I highlighted, or human resources, or analytics, or auditing, or tax, or whatever it may be. Okay, so it may vary depending on where you are. And within those different places, there are different sectors. So think of it like this. You have the parent organization, then you have the parent groups, and then within those parent groups, you have sectors. And in those sectors are basically specialities that you may be focused on. So maybe you're focused on operations only, and that looks at public, private, and charity sector organizations as an example. Again, I haven't worked for a consulting firm, so this is just what I've, heard or inquired about or read about as well. And so when I'm speaking about a consultant, I'm speaking about those types, those individuals who may have been picked up from some sort of graduate scheme, or been referred on, or gone through some sort of program, or really enhanced or advanced interview process before they became a consultant for that specific firm, consultancy, or organization. So now what I'm going to do is break down some of the differences based on some key themes that I think are important to highlight. So the first theme is around the type of work you do and the type of clients you work for. Now, if you think about consultants, they're most likely going to be working for very, I wouldn't say necessarily prestigious, but quite big clients, okay, whether this is in the public or private sector, because of the brand, the reputation that they've developed. And so they're usually going to be the brainchild behind some of the operations or strategy involved in order to set up a new program of works or business or whatever it may be. And so they're definitely going to be meeting different types of individuals within this space in order to deliver the piece of work. Now, when it comes to contractors, again, they usually come in to do the implementation as specialist or niche experts. And again, they may be starting at the same time as some of these consultants, but usually they come a little bit afterwards, and they help to deliver the transformation, the change. And they could be doing this, or may well be doing this, hand in hand with the consultants. But this is where they differ. So the consultants usually come in as a package, as a whole. Sometimes, one or two individuals, but usually as a group of individuals coming to deliver a piece of work. And contractors will come in their unique and different ways into a space. But of course, every organization, every client is going to be different. The second thing is about the network. So I think this is the same for both of them. In this space of contracting and consulting, you have the opportunity to create a huge network. You're meeting different leads, heads of departments, directors, different people with niche expertise and different skills, people who've come from many different various socioeconomic backgrounds. I know when I was working within the COVID space, again, that brought in a melting pot of so many different types of people it really helped in terms of help me identify what was really out there, but also form really good, strong bonds with new relationships, key people, etc., etc. So the networks that you build are huge, both as a contractor and as a consultant as well. So the next thing is around the entrepreneurial spirit, flexibility, and work patterns. So as a consultant, because you're working for an organization, doing a service for an end client, you need to provide some sort of value. Okay, it's really tied to your system of progression and all these different things there. And so this may involve you doing meetings after work or meetings before work or having meetings throughout the work day that are specific to that consultancy in order to evidence that value. So there is additional work that needs to be done there. In addition to that, there's also going to be this whole idea of sticking to certain rules and sets of compliance and all these things that you normally would do for your organization as well. Furthermore, I would say there's less of an entrepreneurial spirit about it. There can be in some instances, of course, it depends on the working environment. But there is this big thing on making sure that consultants produce intellectual property in order to, again, evidence the value that they provide. And of course, that's used as case studies or whatever it may be for those specific consultancies. Now, when it comes to contractor, the same obviously doesn't apply because you're independent. You don't have to go to a consulting meeting, so to speak, because you are your own entity. And so really you're only bound by the sort of cadence that is developed through end client culture or what is required for the program as well. So it's slightly different. And again, if you're starting out as a contractor in setting up a new program of works or business or whatever it may be, there is definitely usually an entrepreneurial spirit that exists, which gives you free rein to be creative, to try new things, to really flex your muscles as an expert within this space. So those are slight differences and things to note as well. The next theme is around climbing the ladder. Now, of course, the main difference between a consultant and a contractor, in this instance at least anyway, is that a consultant is working for a consultancy or a partner group of a parent organization. And so there is more of a ladder to climb, so to speak. You may start out as an intern, you may become a junior consultant, then senior consultant, then possibly associate consultant, if that's a thing, or associate as a word on its own, possibly a partner. Again, I'm not the best person to talk to about this. You can talk to a consultant about this. But what I'm saying is that there are different tiers, and depending on your level of expertise and experience and your qualifications determines the type of compensation that you get. And typically, you know, if you've been within the consulting game for about 5 to 7+ years, then again, that's reflected in your pay as well. So again, how you get paid can be different in different consultancies, but you would have to go to those different consultancies to understand how those different things work. When it comes to a contractor, there isn't necessarily a clear ladder apart from the one that you're trying to create for yourself. So I know some situations where there are some contractors who've gone back into full-time permanent work and they've been offered double the amount they used to make as a permanent employee. And this is sometimes because the organization sees the value that you've provided as a contractor in being in a lot of complex, challenging and ambiguous situations, in flexing your muscles in terms of certain sets of skills and expertise, in working for high-end clients that, again, makes you stand out from just being in the same space, you know, over time. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is just the perception of some people who are doing the shortlisting and trying to get certain candidates for their specific program or delivery. Now, before I continue, if the information about becoming a contractor is appealing to you, then you may like my course on The Independent Consultant, a guide to becoming a contractor within the UK. It is filled with step-by-step information, as well as my experience behind how I got into contracting, what the steps were, what were the different routes, what were some of the hurdles and battles, what were some of the templates that I used, and all these different things housed in this one space in order for you to start your contracting journey, rather than trying to find it sporadically over the net where you're trying to piece all the information together. So if you want something that's comprehensive and step-by-step, that gives you the information that you need so you can really transform your personal life into something that is bigger, badder and bolder, then make sure you click on the link below to start your journey as an independent consultant. Now let's get back into the video. The next thing is around personal brand and reputation. Now, of course, one of the biggest perks when it comes to being a consultant is the fact that you're working for usually a really big organization that has a big, bad, bold reputation. Okay. Now, some of the big four, as you know, I'm not going to mention who they are, have really, really good reputations. And so if you've said you've worked for X company or Y consultancy, there is a certain level of air or respect that is given to you because people have a perception of what these organizations entail. And this is all based on perception. That's what a brand is. I mean, what is the difference between a consultant and a contractor? Well, I'm highlighting some of those differences now, but we're all humans, so to speak. But perception is key when it comes to this stuff. And so this will definitely work for you in terms of, let's say, for example, you don't want to work for this consultancy anymore. You want to do your own thing. That still carries weight. And so these are some of the big perks that you have working for some of these organizations as a consultant. As a contractor, you don't necessarily have the same advantages. However, it's much more based on you crafting and shaping your own personal brand and your own destiny, so to speak. The only good thing about this is that not only is having a good, strong personal brand useful for you, but you have way more control down the line. And depending on the type of person you are, you may thrive on that opportunity in order to get even more opportunities outside of the whole contracting space. So these are different things you can consider when it comes to reputation and personal brand. Regardless of who you are, I think it's important to make sure that you develop some form of strong personal brand within your career space. The next theme is diversity, and I think this is going to be the same for contractors and consultants. There are so many different types of people you can meet from so many different socioeconomic backgrounds and neurodiversities and people of different beliefs and insights and all these different wonderful things. So again, that is the benefit of being either a consultant or contractor. And it really does shape who you are as a person because you are forming rapport, being vulnerable, developing relationships, working with these different types of individuals. And of course, when it comes to being a consultant, the hiring manager is finding the work for you specific to the sector or area that you're focusing on. Okay, and there may be a bit more of a rhythm in terms of the work that you find. As a contractor, you're finding this yourself. The agent is possibly finding, and it does depend on the sort of niche and sort of expert you are in terms of how much work you get and how consistent it is and all that kind of stuff there. But regardless, you're going to meet different types of people. So to me, that's a perk. That's definitely a perk when it comes to this game. The next thing is benefits. So when speaking about benefits, I'm talking about training, pension, healthcare, and all these other things that come with work and money and all these different things. So as a consultant, the benefit of being in the space is that you get state-of-the-art training, or you should do at least anyway. And this will be, training pertained around good, strong vocational education, whether that is things in accountancy or program management or people management, whatever it may be, in order to make sure that you get the job done to a high standard. And again, consultancies usually charge these clients a day rate based on the rank of the individual. Now, it doesn't mean that individual gets the day rate depending on their rank. It just means that the day rate is given to that consultancy because, as you know, consultants will get a salary. And so that money is used for training, for benefits, and for all these different things, as well as many other stuff. And so as a contractor, you are the captain of your ship. You need to make sure that you are your own finance manager. You look at the right pension for you or SIPs. You ensure that you pay for your own training. But 9 times out of 10, most of these contractors have come from experienced places where they have already had training or have the expertise to deliver the work to a high standard. So it kind of depends on the person. But that isn't set up for you already. This is something you need to go out and do yourself in order to make yourself positioned as the best person for the job possible as a contractor. The next theme is around competition. Now, if you're wanting to get into the whole consulting space, there's going to be a lot of competition in the sense that everybody knows about consulting and it's highly competitive. They're looking for the best of the best. Usually these consultancies are in graduate fairs. They're setting up graduate schemes. There may be referrals that exist. There may be people who directly apply. There are rigorous interview processes and assessments that are accompanied with these different, organizations and consultancies. So it's a big process. It's nothing to be taken lightly at all. So that means not everyone's going to get let in. Of course, that means that over time, it can take a while to get to a point where you're making the money you really want to make, but that's with anything. You know, nothing comes in life for free. When it comes to contractors, it is competitive. It can be competitive, but not in the same way. It's competitive in the fact that people are all applying for jobs, but there are so many jobs out there, of course, depending on your niche, where you can apply for these things. And you can find these things openly on things like CV Library, Reed, JobServe, PSR, different agencies, people that you talk to. Okay. So there's a bit more scope and a bit more wiggle room. It doesn't feel as competitive because usually you can find something. I mean, if you're in the standard program project management space, or if you're in a space that's quite big right now, whether it's tech or finance or healthcare, these are quite big at the moment, then you will find something, especially if you have quite a broad sort of natured role or expertise as well. So different nuances there, but there is competition that exists. Next, we have compensation. And so when it comes to a consultant, you know, if you're starting out as a consultant, I believe within the UK at least, a junior consultant averages around 35k or so, plus or minus about 10k. Okay. So, you know, and what I mean by that, it could be 25k, it could be 45k, it could even be in the 50s, but on average, there's about 35k for a junior consultant. Now, what I've heard and what I've been told and what I've read is that usually after 5 years or so, whether that's a strict number, and this is not necessarily the case for all consultancies, there can be a considerable jump in terms of pay. And the average sort of pay for someone who's experienced or has an MBA or has done a PhD or has had 5 to 7 years plus experience can be about 85k plus, okay, plus or minus 10k or even 20k, so to speak, okay. And in some instances, you know, there are individuals who may get a day rate instead. Now, of course, this depends on the organization, and this is not every consultancy, but you would have to speak to someone or be in these spaces to understand what the compensation model looks like for them. Even still, as a contractor, it's very different. From the get-go, you are going to be getting a day rate, okay? There are still hourly rates that exist, but it will basically be a day rate. And so typically, if you're thinking about it pro rata, contractors over time still make more than consultants. Now, this isn't a case of who's better or who's what, because if you think about the pros of a consultant, you're still in a quote unquote stable job. You're still getting a salary. And over those 5 years, you know, that is consistent cash flow that's coming into your sort of bank account. But as a contractor, there is no guarantees. There's no consistency necessarily. You are the captain of your ship. You are finding these opportunities. So there's a bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit. Now, of course, if you're able to consistently find roles, then yes, you'll be sitting quite nicely in that respect in terms of the average pay for the UK. However, there is no guarantees. I want to make that very clear. And so those are the differences when it comes to the compensation. It'd be great to know, what sort of topics would you like to know about more? Comment below. In addition to that, based on all this information, would you prefer to be a consultant or a contractor? Interesting question. I'd love to know your thoughts. Now, again, if you feel like this is the time for you to become a contractor and you want to be a professional within the space and really get the compensation that is being claimed and really meet all these different diverse people and develop your skills and experience, then make sure you check the link below to check out the Independent Consultant, a guide for contracting within the UK. Again, this is a step-by-step breakdown of how to get into contracting, what you need to know, what are the barriers, different templates that you can use in order for you to feel confident about stepping into this space. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.